Who is the foreign entity who is funding radical right-wing groups in the United States? Okay, some distressing news. I just want to wrap this up and this rant, and then I'll pick up your phone calls. This Yahoo News has this exclusive story that was republished over at Daily Kos this morning by middle-of-the-road Dem. And I'll just share a little bit of it. You know, right-wing figures and websites, including VDare, the Daily Stormer, which is the Nazi website, and Nick Fuentes received generous donations from a Bitcoin account linked to a French cryptocurrency exchange. This Chain Analysis is this company that can track the movement of Bitcoin, and they investigated the donations after Yahoo News shared the data points about the transaction. There is apparently either a foreign government or a very wealthy foreign individual who has been pouring money into right-wing treasonous groups in the United States. Now, what country would gain advantage if the United States were to descend into civil war? I can think of a long list, right? China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, any country basically around the world. There's a whole bunch of them. North Korea, those are the ones who are probably most active in the political sphere. But any one of those countries benefits if American democracy goes down the tubes. If American democracy is quote, shown to be a farce or something like that, because we're the example for the world of how democracy works. We've been doing this for 244 years. And if we fall, then the other democracies around the world will probably not last much longer. Or the center of gravity for democracy and the praise and upholding of democracy will shift away from the United States and over to, for example, Europe. And people will start saying, you know who we want to be like? We want to be like Norway. Or Germany, actually, is probably more likely, rather than the United States. And isn't that bizarre after we fought World War I, both wars, actually, against Germany. But in any case, and I got nothing against Germany. I lived there for a year. I have good friends there. It's a great country. Anyhow, and then this thing, the GOP freakout, I hit the brake in the first segment as I was telling you about this, how the Obama administration, the FBI in 2009 said, we've got a problem. The Department of Homeland Security issued this intelligence report about the threat of right-wing extremism. It was the second, it was one of two. They did one on left-wing extremism and foreign terrorism, and one on right-wing extremism. And they said that there was a real threat here. But there was such a scream, such an outcry from elected Republicans and particularly Fox News and right-wing hate radio that Janet Napolitano, who at the time was the director of, the Secretary of Homeland Security, caved in, rescinded the report. The Daryl Johnson, who was one of the guys who worked on this report for the DHS, he said work related to violent right-wing extremism was halted as a result of this, right? Because Rush Limbaugh was screaming about it, and Republicans in Congress were saying, how dare you issue a report making it look like Republicans are affiliated with terrorists. So this is the guy who was inside the Department of Homeland Security who helped write the report, Daryl Johnson. He wrote, work related to violent right-wing extremism was halted. This is 2009, under President Obama, was halted. Law enforcement training also stopped. That would be with regard to right-wing extremism and its threat. My unit was disbanded. His unit was the group that was tracking white extremist, white nationalist, white supremacist, violent groups in the United States. They were disbanded in 2009. He goes on to say, and one by one, my team of analysts left for other employment. By 2010, there were no intelligence analysts at DHS working domestic terrorism threats. And if you think that Donald Trump put any in place, think again. So, surprise, surprise. There's a right-wing uprising in the United States, and the federal government doesn't know about it. This, by the way, isn't the first time this happened. As Josh Marshall's pointing out over at TalkingPointsMemo.com, he says back in April 1995 with the bombing of the Oklahoma City Federal Building, he writes, Republicans who had just taken control of Congress in January of that year quickly shifted gears to defending militias, calling these militias conservatives being smeared by the association with McVeigh. In June of 1995, Josh Marshall writes, the Senate held a hearing aimed at humanizing members of the militia movement with little more than very motivated conservative activists. As Ken Adams of one Michigan militia group told senators at the hearing, quote, what's the militia? We're doctors, lawyers, people getting involved in their government. And thus, here we are. How are we not surprised by this? Where do we go from here on this?